remember the morning after Sandy moved through. It was misty, the storm was pulling off the coast, and you could just hear the roar of the Atlantic Ocean. It was different. I've never heard anything like that. As the fog lifted and the clouds moved out, every so often you get a glimpse of the barrier island, and what I remember seeing is just a foamy white line on top of the dune line. There was one particular area where it looked like the ocean had breached. That was scary, to come down here and taste the salt in the air and hear the ocean and see the Atlantic Ocean breaching the barrier island. But quickly I realized that something spectacular was happening, something that was possibly a very positive thing. And I couldn't wait to get out there to see. It's like a little adventure. I've been on the water since March, 2 or 3 times a week, and most of those times I've been to the inlet. But that's a debate actually that's still brewing. Is it a breach or is it an inlet? What's the difference? There is no true definition of breach versus inlet. So we decided, or I have decided to refer to it as an inlet because it sounds more permanent that way. I love it as much as I love my wife, my friends, my family, my business, my daughters. It's right up there. And I'll do almost anything to protect it. And I will stand on the beach should the Army Corps send equipment onto the beach in hopes to prevent them from not closing this wonderful gift.
We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do, till the blue skies drive the dark clouds far away.
Look how clear the water is. You get to see polluted water leave our bay, and then the tide switches, you see fresh seawater come into our bay. We're standing on a sandbar that did not exist back in March. Over the course of last winter, the breach opened up all the way to the thick line of brush in the distance. It's actually now eroding back this peninsula, which was at one point twice as large. I always find something to take home. And how cool is this? Probably 50 years old or so, I don't know. It could have drifted from Japan. Many people see the creation of the breach as something destructive, something that's changing their environment, and that they no longer have the protection that they thought they once had. I see this as not a problem, but as a natural evolution. The best thing to do is let Mother Nature find its way and create the shape of the barrier island that it believes is most important. We should step back and come off the beach, migrate in a symbiotic way, as opposed to trying to fortify against it, which will only waste money, energy, time, and will lose in the end anyway.
Aftermath of the storm. High tide after the storm.
Still another hour away.
You know, but Sandy had come through, you know, the night before, whatever, 1, 2 a.m.
What was going through your mind when you were taking this video?
Holy shit. Is my property ever going to be dry and usable again? Just absolute shock. All my decking was wiped out, back door smashed in, everything in the house was destroyed. I had about 3 feet of water in the house. and the tides still come up. This was pretty much my high water mark where I'm standing. This is my high water mark now. This is not the norm, or was not the norm pre-Sandy, pre-breach. I mean, there was grass here, it had to be mowed. This is it.
The only benefit is you don't have to mow your lawn anymore.
Well, I still have to have a landscaper come in and do something with the rest of it, but it was nice to have grass here instead of, this on a regular basis. This damage behind me is caused by Sandy, and here we are over a year later, and she's still nowhere near back in her house. She's done anything but gut it. And the house just past this, they just finished the work on that about a month or so ago. I imagine it's kind of tough to do now after Sandy. People are nervous, and again, I have to point to, we have higher tides now. I'd like to see it closed. My big concern with leaving it open, there's gonna be another storm. Ocean water is gonna have that much more opportunity to rush into the bay and flood this property and other properties. I don't want to see that happen for me or for anybody else.
With regard to this breach, there are a lot of environmental values and benefits that we're seeing, but we have to balance that against the risks that also have to be considered.
This meeting purpose is to ensure that the information actually gets to the public. Often the information that's important gets stuck in the bureaucracy.
There are alternatives. One is to let nature take its course. The next alternative is to take action to close it.
So I find that my role should be to ensure that that information comes to the public, and I think the public appreciated that. Here's a video that I took this past summer, which is an outgoing tide. We're looking towards the northeast. There's a lot that was shared here today, and now we all can consider this issue with a more educated point of view.
If you have a surge from a hurricane 2, 3, 4, or 5, Katrina style, you will have 25 to 30 foot waves crashing into the homes in Mastic Beach, Bellport, and other parts of the islands.
If we had a Katrina style hurricane, which was vastly more powerful than Sandy, this inlet would be sort of the least of your problems. This is one of those kiss your ass goodbye kind of situations. It's going to come thundering through.
Oh, well, I probably hadn't plugged it in, you dumb schmuck. Here we go.
Well, I'm a physical oceanographer, and the physical oceanographer is one who is interested in where the water came from and where it's going and what's in it and why. The purpose of this whole apparatus is to measure the velocity of the water through the inlet. We want to determine how much of the bay is impacted directly by the tidal flow.
This measures the horizontal flow of the water from the surface to the bottom. Once we get the flux through the inlet, you can look at some relationships to help you understand whether the inlet will eventually close or open. So that's important.
I would like to make sure that the politicians and the people who actually have to make decisions are basing their responses on the science. Clearly, people who have been flooded out are emotional at the very least and would very much like to blame something, and something that they could correct. 100% goods seems to be working. I'll be darned.
Kevin, have you been here before?
No, not by boat. My boat's too large. It draws too much water to get in here.
All right.
You said that's like 8 feet of water?
Yeah.
Wow.
And all summer it's kind of zipped around this way. And eventually, I imagine this will open up again.
Also indicative of the flood delta. You know, wherever you see those marsh islands like that, you can pretty much tell there's an inlet there. And this is not unique to Fire Island. I mean, barrier islands, you know, up and down the East Coast. It's, you know, it's evolution of barrier islands. You know, the breaches, the overwashes. You know, inlets open, they close. The notion that we're going to harness these barrier islands and stabilize them is short-sighted. There's a much bigger phenomenon at play here, and that's, you know, sea level rise and global warming.
This could be, you know, petrified droppings from an animal, or it could be a meteorite. I'm not sure. I don't have the ability to identify this. In the early 1800s, SS Savannah was the first steamship to make a transatlantic crossing. After it made that historic crossing, it became a transport ship that moving cargo up and down the eastern seaboard. During one of those voyages, it ran into a heavy storm, ran aground at a place called Fireplace, which is exactly where we're standing today. The remnants of the SS Savannah remain on the beach in this area, so keep your eyes open.
This is not the same bay. It's not. The water has gone up and up and up. The breach has gotten huge. We used to see a couple of little islands in there. Now I'm looking out at the ocean. Don't tell me that we're not having higher tides, because we are. I've lived here 30 years. I didn't have this kind of damage in Gloria, which was a Cat 3 hurricane. This is where my business was. I'm a hairdresser, yeah. You gotta beam walk a little bit. My island was here, stove, countertop, and a refrigerator and a Hoosier in that corner. And this was my mother's apartment. Thank God she wasn't home. This is what's left of our lives in this room. This is it. I was on the phone with my foster daughter, and I just went, holy shit. And she said, what's the matter, Mom? What's the matter? And I said, there's a wave coming at me, and it's 2 stories high. And she said, can't be, until we heard the water splat up against these windows. It was a tidal wave. It was a surge. It was something way beyond.
Have you dealt with FEMA too? Or?
Yes, that's a joke altogether. The list of documentation is endless. You put in this much documentation, oh, they want more. Or you put this much documentation and they want more.
What is the main obstacle here now in terms of getting yourself back into this home?
I don't know. I'm still saying the same sentence I said. October 30th. I don't know.
My 15th anniversary as baykeeper. It's great work. I like it. Drawing from my education and professional training. So kind of a culmination. This job allows me to really be true to the resource, meeting the waters and inform the public of real issues. This feeds out to part of the patrol area for my organization. Hold on. Right now, the flushing through here is significant. You can feel the currents. This water is turned over. Eastern Great South Bay doesn't really benefit from that turnover. What's called extended residence time. In other words, the water is kind of, the same water stays there for weeks and weeks. And ultimately, as it's receiving groundwater from the mainland with a host of pollutants, it's almost like a bit of a stew, if you will, a pollution stew. With that breach, you're getting, that flush on a daily basis. So it's a very positive effect. Why spend $25 million of taxpayer dollars to artificially close it, through a dredging project, when it, again, is providing such benefits to water quality.
Going back 30, 40 years, if you came out this canal, you'd see more clam boats than you saw anything else. Now, if you see a clam boat, you're lucky. Going out to the first licensed oyster farm in the Great South Bay, in an area which was wiped out in the 70s. All the water coming into the bay, going back, 18, 20, 30 miles this way, is coming from that inlet. So all that water's going out, and all that water's coming back in, right? So we get a really good flow here. Even with the inlet at the other one, which is opened up again, there's a lot of controversy over that. I don't think it's changing the tides much at all. People think it does, but if you go back and look at the tidal changes, you'll probably find that it's not affecting it at all. The only thing it is doing is cleaning the bay up.
It's in the ocean.
I could tell you right now, this is a significant find. My first impression is it certainly is from a ship. Maybe a line ran through this. This is certainly links to a chain. Maybe it was part of an anchor system. Mother Nature is acting as an archaeologist, uncovering things as the sand moves around. This is just a great example of finding something spectacular on the beach. Sticking out of the eroded face of the dune was this piece of rubber. After doing some research, discovered that what this is an old tire. And after doing additional research, I learned that this tire may very well be a tire from the early 1900s. This heavy gauge metal, which I found sticking out of the dune, it's encrusted with shells and barnacles, so it was certainly underwater for a long period of time. Along this edge you can see big rivets, and one gentleman suggested that due to the very thick gauge of the metal, this could have been from a system that was under high pressure, such as a boiler. That maybe it's the boiler from the SS Savannah, which we know had boilers in her lower hull.
Well, right now we're sitting at the eastern end of Robert Moses State Park on Fire Island. Hurricane Sandy completely wiped out the dune system for much of this area here. So now this area is very susceptible to a breaching event occurring here. It is also the only way off the island now because we have an active inlet to the east, so there's no way off on the east end. And directly in front of me, you have the mainland of Long Island communities of Bayshore, Islip, and Babylon, which were very heavily devastated during Sandy. So this is an area of big concern for us. This entire area was completely overwashed. And if you look out that side over there, you can see where the dunes were. They were probably 20, 25 feet high up in that location. And water pushed all the way through, all the way in. This road here was under about 5 feet or 6 feet of sand. You can see here the crews are working to rehabilitate all of the lost boardwalks. And you can see all the foliage is all dead in there, and that's from the saltwater intrusion. People have rallied around the inlet and the breaching that occurred there, but not really, or failed to really discuss the larger problems that are facing our area. There's still thousands of people who are not in their homes. They are still extremely vulnerable to flooding. This entire island landscape has been altered. There are 3 million people who live on Long Island. 27,000 houses in a 100-year floodplain, just in this 83-mile stretch. So we are very vulnerable to the next storm that comes along. So how can we just say now, well, nature will take care of itself? If you had a completely natural system, I would probably agree. However, we don't have a natural system here, and anybody who says we do is just awfully off track. This man has left a footprint on this environment here bigger than Godzilla. We have dredged channels, built dunes. We built this entire causeway to facilitate Robert Moses and Jones Beach State Park. So to say, well, we're just going to let nature take its course right now, I think is really a cop-out, in my opinion. And I think what it does is, in a way, it does not acknowledge the influence man has had on this and the fact that we now have a responsibility to manage this for future generations. If I could predict what that breach was going to do, I'd probably be working on Wall Street. I think it needs to be closed, but I think it needs to be closed from a flood risk potential. We have increased the vulnerability and the unknowns associated with what may happen in that eastern part of the bay. Let's start planning for our future and understanding that that future might not be the future that we once thought it would be, and be prepared for it. Don't sit around and just hope, because hope, at the end of the day, is not a plan.
This is the latest of the aerial overflights. Well, this is the spit that formed in the summer and fall, and it moves up and is almost touching Pelican Islands. From a storm surge and tide perspective, the breach does not seem to have made a measurable difference. Our data show the excess flooding that seemed to be happening in the spring of 2013 was not confined to Great South Bay. It was events that covered the region from Cape Hatteras to Cape Cod. If the breach was sufficiently large such that tidal ranges were affected throughout the bay, that would be a clear indication that the breach is having an impact. But the tide ranges have not changed. Inlets in barrier islands form and they go away. That's the nature of barrier islands. It probably won't last 60 years, but it could.
I'm standing on a peninsula that wasn't here a week ago. This is built up sand from the currents over the last week or so. It's just a good example of how the inlet's always changing. It's described as dynamically stable, and it wobbles. It changes shape and it changes orientation, and so it's always moving. It's always very satisfying for me to see the ebb and flow.
Long Islanders are so connected to our waters. I mean, we're defined by our waters, and you know, they're an economic engine for this region. You know, obviously the recreational activities, spiritual activities. You know, it's just, we're seeped in our waters, and you know, we have to be very conscious about, you know, some of the actions that we're taking in responses to storms like this. You know, after Sandy, the immediate response was either to fortify or rebuild. You know, we will not retreat. That's kind of the American way. Well, quite frankly, that's stupid logic now, because there's no way you're going to, you know, defeat Mother Nature and the big ocean here.
Managed to get worse. It's really unbelievable. They've really only been able to do what they call strapping, where they strap the first floor to the second floor to prepare it for lift. But we can't lift until we get a bulkhead. If we can't bulkhead, we can't lift the house because this is unstable. They're forcing us to lift the house. We're willing to do it, but we can't do it until we can stabilize the land with a bulkhead and backfill this. If we can't get that done within the next 3-4 weeks, it will be out another year, because if we ever get back, because can't pour the concrete for the foundation and do the lift in the middle of the winter, which, you know, another year. Is there any hope? I don't know anymore. I've lived in I don't know for almost 2 years now.
The science is out. The determinations have been made that this breach does not adversely affect private property or people. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The breach is very beneficial. And it appears as though the government is not calling for its immediate closure.
I don't really remember the sea quality from being young. We swam in the bay whether it was clean or dirty and have continued to do so. But much to my husband's relief, we're now swimming in a clean bay again, so that makes him happy for our children.
You guys want to come out?
Mommy, watch out for the horseshoes.
I see them. Don't worry, they're not. Here, I'll carry you over.
I don't want my shoes to get wet.
The bay is just so full of life. It's really incredible. I mean, we feel like we're down in the Bahamas right now. What's not to love?
This whole island. We took a walk down there. It's just absolutely beautiful. It is like
stunning.
It's our little Caribbean.
Oh, look at one cell.
Oh Lord, look at this. How many do we have here? You know, with this winter erosion that takes place, Mother Nature has revealed artifacts. Some of the pieces I have, according to others who have looked at them, who know a lot more about marine archaeology than I, have determined that they are from ships. I'm optimistic that the remains of the savannah will be revealed. It's been a wonderful journey for me. It's always a great pleasure for me to come here and just enjoy what Mother Nature has provided us. We're hoping that one day on the maps this will be called something like Bellport Inlet, and no longer referred to as a breach, because it is a mature, evolving, wobbling inlet.